Hey everybody. So to get started, I want to talk about the things we should have so far in Chinese history. So when we start out our history in China, we want to realize that we're starting out probably closer to 2000 BCE. And I'll share this document out, but I want to run through it to make sure that we have this structure and these ideas to get us started. Our first dynasty is the Xia. Now, one of the things we have to know is that this is the mythical first dynasty in China, and that it possesses these sage emperors that they create, meaning these brilliant emperors who are used to teach lessons. So they are meant to model and show behavior that people are supposed to follow. Okay, one of the traits that emerges early in Chinese history, we know, at least by the time of the Shang, is ancestor worship, meaning that there is a belief that your deceased ancestors have an impact and control over your life, which will reinforce the importance of family and will reinforce the importance, especially of leading families. We know, like every other dynasty, every other empire we've seen in the world, there was a nobility that took control. They owned land, and usually were a warrior class. Now, the threat was horseback nomads to the north. All right, and so you needed these landed nobles who could fight on horseback and wage war, usually in chariots, to deal with these threats of migrating peoples into your region. And this is something that we've seen, again, across a number of cultures globally. This would be akin to Mesopotamia, with the Sumerians, Akkadians, Babylonians, the Indus in India, any of our precursor river valley civilizations, the Egyptians. We know they're working bronze. We see the origin of writing. We're not going to invest a ton of time into this period, but it's really important that we get that idea. Our next one is the Shou dynasty. And under the Shou, we know that the Mandate of Heaven is written, and we have that document. It is on the agenda. Hopefully, we've read through that. Right? And it shows our political transfer of power, or what we would call the dynastic cycle. And so this is this idea that you have several dynasties after the Shou. We're going to fall into the Warring States period. All right. But after the Xia, the Shang, and the Zhou, really, you're going to see the Qin, the Han, the Sui, the Tang, the Song, the Yuan, the Ming, and the Qing. And then it's 1911 CE. So this provides roughly 3,000 years, okay, of political structure and turnover of power. All right? It attaches the morality of the ruler to the success of the state. So that's really important for us to note. All right? If things are going well, then in the mandate, it mentions that it's because the ruler possesses the right moral actions, and the gods and their ancestors approve of their behavior. However, if things start to go awry and aren't going well, we know that they mention calamities from heaven is the document, and those can actually be traced back to the actions in the Mandate of Heaven of Xia emperors. So it talks about the early Xia going well because these sage emperors and everyone following their teaching and doing what their ancestors did, but the late Xia doesn't. And so that document talks about the Shang overthrowing them. Now, this was probably created by the Shou dynasty, and the Shou probably created it purely to justify their rule. Okay? But one of the important powers that this gives is it justifies the rule of an incoming dynasty. Okay? And that's super important. Now, late in the Shou dynasty, we know that China breaks into the Warring States period. So it's politically fragmented. Okay? And that's really important for us to note. This is the first time that that has happened in Chinese history. So we're going to see three semi-religion slash philosophies emerge during this time. And the big question they're trying to answer is, how do we put China back together? The big one that we should know, first off, is Confucianism. Okay? And Confucianism will reinforce what we call filial piety, Okay, religious reverence for family, especially the father. This is akin to what we see in many, many, many cultures globally. Another thing that's reinforced is the importance of education. And because Confucius was a bureaucrat, we know that those are seen as very important. All right, so the government official, the educated government official is important. We also see the idea of humaneness, taking care of others. All right, not wealth, but caring for the people. Following government is a key. So there's a quote that Confucius gives, when the wind blows, the grass bends. The emperor is the wind, the people are the grass. You bend to the will of the emperor. And again, as long as things are going well, we should do this. The people should be obedient, and the emperor should be good to the people. Okay? So, all this should be happening. Okay? So, make sure that we understand that, and we should be good to go. All right? So let's move on then, and let's talk about another one. Another we will see is Taoism. Now, Taoism, we could read through. This would be your traditional idea of yin and yang, all right? Balance. So when we think of this one, it's the yin and the yang represent things that are opposites that have to flow together for the world to function. Often Taoism is described as a religion of going with the flow. And the belief actually in popularity of this increases over time because there was a belief that if you truly achieve this balance, you could achieve immortality. A lot of our early Chinese religions don't talk about what happens when you die a ton. And that's going to be a reason Buddhism will spread there in the 300s. And we will talk about the spread of Buddhism once trade starts and into East Asia. All right, we'll get there. So Taoism emerges. We're not going to spend a ton of time on that one. The other one we want to look at is this early philosophy that we'll examine a little bit today called legalism. All right, and this is a very might equals right philosophy. If you have political power, you should do what benefits the state because you have power. There is a story that we could read through. It is called the Five Vermin, and we can take a look at a quick excerpt here. So he was a student of Confucius. He abandons Confucian thought, this Han Fei. And so let's take a look just at some of these early chunks out of it, all right, right here. There was a farmer of Song, so in the Song region, who tilled the land, and in his field was a stump. One day, a rabbit was racing across the field and bumped into the stump and broke its neck and died. Thereupon, the farmer laid aside his plow and took up watch beside the stump, hoping he would get another rabbit in the same way. But he got no more rabbits, and instead became the laughingstock of Song. Those who think they can take the ways of ancient kings and use them to govern the people of today all belong in the category of stump watchers. I would like you to think about this one a little bit and what Han Fei is saying. Confucius is constantly saying, hey, we need to go back to the ways that these ancient emperors ruled. Han Fei's argument is, that's foolish. Those solutions that worked in the past no longer work today. We also can see in this chunk below here, humaneness may make one shed tears and be reluctant to apply penalties, but law makes it clear that penalties must be applied. Ancient kings allowed law to be supreme and did not give in to their tearful longings. Hence, it is obvious that humaneness cannot be used to achieve order in the state. So what we're going to see here is a very deep opinion that, humaneness is nice and all. But at the end of the day, we need rule of law. We need law and order. So this is an argument that is established by Han Fei. It's very different. It is a pragmatic political philosophy that says government should be in control. and should use penalties, whereas Confucius talks about fixing the family, fixing the roots of the tree, okay? Han Fei will say shape the tree, right? Shape the tree, don't worry about the roots. It's very important that we understand these underlying political philosophies to understand how they are applied afterwards. So if we come back over to our note page, okay, our first dynasty to seize control at the end of the Warring States will be the Qin dynasty. All right, the Qin dynasty will seize power in about 250 BC, and they are very legalist. It will happen under a guy named Qin Shi Huangdi. All right, he is a legalist ruler. Employs a very powerful military to conquer China. He's very successful in doing this. This is where we get the name Qin. China expands to similar borders to the modern borders, known for being brutal and cruel. He destroys Confucian temples and burns Confucian books. Right? He attempts to essentially erase that philosophy from the region. And, you know, it does put a lot of accountability and limitation on the role of an emperor, and he obviously is opposed to this. It is really one generation. There's a cool story. There's an attempted assassination of Qin Shi Huangdi. They have like a strong man stand inside of a big metal cone, and when his carriages are coming underneath, the guy actually throws this metal cone that rolls down the hill, smashes one of the carriages, and kind of is like, you know, imperial motorcade. Qin Shi Huangdi was in a different one. It somehow survived. But anyway, not popular, brutal, cruel, but is able to assemble this China and put an end to this time of warring states by employing some of these really powerful, cruel strategies, which makes me wonder a little bit if his ruling strategy makes the next dynasty possible. So we can see a lot and learn a lot in Chinese history, and we'll talk about that momentarily. Okay, he does unify China, all right, and it's important that we do note that. All right. Now, was he as brutal and cruel as we hear? Maybe, but you know, it's one of those things that we have to look at. That the Confucian scholars tell the story in a lot of Chinese history, and so it's important for us to note that, you know, it's possible that their bias does shape some of the story in regard to him. One of the things that you may have seen before from Qin Shi Huangdi's reign would be the Terracotta Army. And there's a ton of images that you can find. But in his tomb, you'll find that there are thousands of soldiers that were built. This is a pretty decent image that we can see right here. If you look over here, all right, and each one is different, and they're all in the tomb of Qin Shi Huangdi, all right? Each one, down to the treads of their shoes, is different. And if there's anything that we can see from this at about 250, 230 BC, is the idea of extreme levels of political control. So imagine the level of organization and control that he was able to employ in order to get this type of structure built, and this type of tomb built. So we can see that each soldier has a different face, different armor, equipment. Everything that is done here is unique, and it's really important for us to note that each person has their own individual artistic flair to them. So that's kind of an interesting piece for us to note when we look at this, and it's one of those major historical finds. Now, the next dynasty that we are going to move on to is going to be the Han Dynasty, all right? And that is going to be a major one that we need to understand. They are going to be a deeply Confucian dynasty that we'll invest some time in, and we'll employ something we will call a civil service exam. And we'll talk about that one in our next session. So hopefully we can understand the early history, and then we'll work from the Han forward in our next session. Thank you.